Everyone, we apologize for our slight technical delay. The third laptop worked. The first two, for whatever reason, kept shutting down. They're doing updates on the internet. I'm Michael Sawyers. I'm the superintendent in Albany Plain Local Schools. We'd like to welcome you tonight to the parent overview or community overview related to the R Factor. We're very excited that you're here. This is the start of a journey and a conversation throughout our school district that we've kicked off with kids just before spring break at the high school, and now in grades K through 8 across the school district after spring break. So this is the big week for elementary in particular, grades K through 6. So we're going to kind of frame the conversation that's going to happen tonight. There are a lot of people in the room that will be available after the presentation tonight to help you. They have white name tags on like I do. They're district administrators or district personnel that work in our school district that will be available to answer questions individually if you have them, or if you choose to do it in large group when we have time at the end, we're happy to do that as well. I'm not going to introduce everybody because it takes too long, but they're all administrators across the school district or staff members in our school district that are here tonight. So if you're an administrator or a staff member in the district, would you just please stand to be recognized and thanked for everything you do every single day in our school district. I'd also like to introduce Paul Newmoff. I know he's one of the Board of Education members that came in this evening. Paul is here and will also be available to answer questions you may have beyond the R Factor, since he's a Board of Education member within our school district as well. So let's start with framing the conversation before we get into the actual R Factor work and Scott Daly. So the statement of purpose within our school district, as you all know from everything that you see that we do, is to create a culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student. And our goal is really to try to have this conversation every single day to talk about what we're doing and frame it in a conversation of our why, how, and what. And this is really what that does. So this is the learning target that we use across our school district to frame the work that happens every single day, academically and social emotionally, to benefit kids in our school district. And it starts with the center of the bullseye, and ultimately talks about the why. Why are we here every single day? Student achievement, student growth, and student well-being. Kids first, students first. Our focus across the school district, and we're very fortunate, we have nearly 4,900 kids on campus today, plus change, 4989 I think was this morning's count. It changes every week because someone moves in or someone moves out, but we have nearly 5,000 kids across our school campus in grades pre-K through 12. So we're very, very fortunate. But the why frames our conversation for everything we do in the school district every single day: student achievement, student growth, and student well-being. Then we talk about the how and the what. The how, ultimately, are the four domains that surround the bullseye from the center, and it's through curriculum assessment, instruction, and social emotional learning that take place, or programming and developmental aspects that we do, to talk about what impacts student achievement, student growth, and student well-being. So everything in the kid world is either in those four domains: curriculum, assessment, instruction, and or through social emotional competency. And then we ask ourselves questions to frame the conversations. What is it we expect our students to learn? And you should have the right as a parent to know that. Every single staff member in our school district can answer that question for you if you ask. What is it we expect our kids to learn? What will we do to know what they have learned? What will we do when some students do not learn it? And what will we do when some students already know it? And that's the enrichment piece, ultimately, that happens to take learning to a deeper level. And what do students need socially and emotionally to learn? And again, this is the learning target that frames everything across the school campus and this thing we call education and what we do in school. So within our school district, lately, we've been having conversations over the course of the last year about student well-being. And the R Factor is going to connect to this work. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Marilyn Troyer, who's the assistant superintendent, who's going to walk you through highlights of our well-being initiative to connect to the R Factor. Marilyn?
Thank you. I'm Marilyn Troyer. It's great to see so many of you here this evening. We're really excited that you're here, and hope that you enjoyed the presentation this evening and learn more about it. So, as Michael said, we are more than just about academics. When you think school, generally we think academics, we think grades, we think things like that. But for the development of every child, so much more than that is important. If someone's doing well academically but struggling with depression or with any other kinds of mental health issues or social or emotional issues, then that's a serious concern. So we are fortunate to have had the support of the board and of the superintendent to look very deeply at the social emotional learning of our students as well as the academic. So my objective this evening is to really quickly give you a high-level overview of what we have been doing so far. So over the past several years, we have established a really strong partnership with lots of great partners in the community, from our PTOs to Concord Counseling to Healthy New Albany. You can see them all listed up here, and I'm not going to read them all. But Nationwide Children's Hospital, OSU, they're all there working with us on this important topic. We believe very firmly that a student's well-being is just as important, or in some cases even more important than their grades. If they're doing well, but they are not doing, if they're doing well academically, but they're not doing well in terms of their social and emotional development, you probably know as a parent that that's just as debilitating as not doing well academically. So just to highlight a couple of things, most kids who do receive mental health services receive them within the context of a school setting. School-based interventions in combination with family interventions have been shown to be the most successful in terms of the approach for students who are struggling. Teens whose parents talk to them about drugs are half as likely to use drugs. And students from homes characterized by mutual involvement, shared interests, and emotional support are much less likely to report suicidal thoughts or intentions. So these are all important factors that we consider as we do this work. So our vision is that every one of our students has a strong sense of well-being, and that is both physically as well as mentally. Our mission for the Wellbeing Initiative is to partner with you in the community to empower you with resources that will help maximize the mental and physical well-being of each student. So for this year, our focus or scope for the program are these areas that have been identified. These will likely continue over time, but they may be modified as well. So suicide prevention is a focus of our Wellbeing Initiative. Alcohol, tobacco, and other drug education and prevention. And then developmental education, which is things like bullying prevention, internet safety and citizenship. Do we know what our kids are doing online and who they're in contact with and what's going on there? Emotional competencies, cognitive behavioral competencies, and then social competencies. So to do this important work, we have, as I said, many partners. We have created, with one of our community partners, Rick Bayer, a community member has really taken the lead in a lot of this work with us. And we have created with him 4 what we call SWAT teams, Special Working Action Teams, to focus on 4 different areas. One of them is the Parent Education Team, and it is chaired by, and I'm drawing a complete blank on your name right now, I'm looking at you, Sarah Underhill. Sarah, would you stand up for a moment, please? Sarah is chairing that team, and she has 50 parents in the community who are working with her on reaching these objectives of educating parents on their critically important role in helping their children possess a strong sense of well-being. So if you are interested in helping with the parent education component, you can see Sarah after the session this evening. We are putting together, have put together a team to help us create online resources for parents. You know, things come up with your kids at all hours of the day and night, and we may not be here at school at that time. But on our website, we have resources already, and we're continuing to build more of them. What to do if something's happening with your child at home, and where can you go for help? We also had a friend-raising team. Laura Kohler, I don't know if Laura's here tonight or not, is heading that one up for us. So this is to educate people both about the work that we're doing, and then to see if they might be able to join in and support by donating their time, donating their effort, volunteering, donating dollars or other resources. And then finally, a best-in-class team. We are working with some professionals in this area to really research and evaluate best-in-class programs, so that what we're offering here in New Albany is the best that's available for helping our students in this area. There are lots of things we've accomplished in the last 18 months. I know you can't see this, but from putting together the organizational structure, the leadership team, the partnerships, the internal team that we have working on this, community forums, just lots and lots of things that we've been doing. So you'll be hearing more over the coming weeks and months about the Wellbeing Initiative. And we encourage you to join in any way that you feel able or would like to join in. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Scott Daly. Scott is a community member who works with Focus 3, and he has been working both in our district with our staff, as well as many other school districts, corporations, and other entities on Focus 3 and on the R Factor. So we're glad you're in our community and you're willing to help us with this work. So welcome, Scott.
not totally used to working with leashes, but I will work and just stay in the middle. So normally keeping me still is not an easy thing. I'll go ahead and introduce myself first, just because it's kind of necessary to understand kind of how I ended up here and why this is so valuable for both your students and for you as parents, as well as the district as a whole. Again, Scott Daly. I'm originally from near Dayton. I grew up, went to Ohio State. I actually broke my neck freestyle wrestling in high school, so I was paralyzed on the left side for a little while. Following that, I made a really great decision. I decided to join the Navy after 9/11, because, you know, why not? And I decided I was going to be a Navy SEAL. So after breaking my neck, I decided to go do that. And the reason that that's pertinent to this conversation is because what I realized very quickly is that it's not about natural gifts, natural ability, natural skill that makes people successful. It's behavior. It's how you spend your time. It's how you invest your time day in and day out. My journey to this point was really based on the fact that what I had learned in the SEAL teams, when I got out of the SEAL teams, I met Tim Kite and I found out that this material is exactly what we were seeking out for those kind of personalities, that strong, driven personality that will overcome anything. So when we look at the R factor, and what we're going to talk about tonight is the overview of this system, and just give you guys the 10,000 foot level, so you can kind of get the gist of what your kids are going to be saying when they come home. So if you hear your child look at you and say, "Mom, Dad, that's BCD," you don't look confused. So I'm going to start simple, and just a little bit of background about Focus 3. We work with both corporations, we work with schools. We're in almost 40 school districts currently. This actually started as a school project only a few years ago, actually about 3 or 4 years ago with Hilliard, and it was so wildly successful, we started getting other districts reach out to us. Initially, this was a corporate program. From a corporate program, we went to athletics. How many people here are familiar with Urban Meyer's book, Above the Line? Okay, well, we wrote that. So Urban Meyer sat with Tim Kite and wrote that, and the reason is that it's about that exceptional behavior piece. And believe it or not, that book has been our leeway into most of the education side because people found it was very, very useful. So I will start simply. That's me. I'll be honest, I'm going to leave my email up there for a minute, and I don't usually shy away from this, but I want you to have it up there. If something comes up and you guys feel that, you know what, I can't get the question answered properly, that happens. So let's see if I can fix it. Well, I can work through either way. It was my email. It's scott@focus3.com. That's my email. But I want to start with, what does Focus 3 work with? And what you get is the R factor as part of our program is it's leadership, culture, and behavioral skill are what we teach. So when we look at that, is this right here. It's the performance pathway. It happens in businesses. It happens in your home. It happens in athletic teams. It happens in schools. And that's leaders create culture. They decide the rules of the road. They decide what the established culture is going to be. Culture is what drives behavior, and behavior is what produces results. So if you look simply at it, if I want to get better results in my life, what do I need going backwards? The first thing I need is the interactive part, because I hate talking to myself. I talk to myself a lot, which is not good, but I hate doing it in other people around. So if I want better results in my life, I need better behavior. If you look at your student, if you look at yourself in your personal life, you say, if I want better results, I just have to change my activities. I have to change the things I do, how I spend my time. And the reason that we really focus on that is very often people will talk about kids like, that person's just really talented. And I find that to be kind of a not totally genuine statement. You look at someone who's a phenomenal athlete, and they'll say, they're just really, really talented. Is it talent, or is it they spend an absorbent amount of time practicing? You look at the Michael Phelps book, I don't know how many of you read that. He added an extra 5 or 10 minutes a day of practice every day, until finally at the end of the week, he looked back and said, I practiced a whole other practice than anybody else. It wasn't just talent, it was how he invested his time. The same thing happens with how your student studies, how you spend time with each other. It's an investment of your time, it's behavior. So when we look at this and you say, I want better behavior, that means I need a culture that demands it. Now, culture is one of those fuzzy words. A lot of you have heard it ad nauseum. What is culture? This is my public question. I ask this everywhere I go and I get a million answers. So what do you guys think culture is? School culture, home culture, what is it?
Norms of behavior.
Say again?
Norms of behavior.
Norms of behavior? Yeah. What else? The environment? Yeah.
It's your daily lifestyle.
Daily lifestyle? What we do is we look at culture as a very, very specific function, both in a school, in your home, even in your business. Culture exists to elicit the behaviors that you need out of the people in your home or in your business or in your school to execute the strategy. So in education, there's a strategy, how they go about educating kids. And that means they have to have certain behaviors out of both staff, parents, and students to get that to happen. So what we say is it's beliefs, the shared beliefs that we all have in common. The shared behaviors, that if we do those behaviors, we will get a certain experience or an outcome out the other side. Belief, behavior, and outcome. And you guys have that in front of you. I think everybody's got a copy of this right here. Everybody got this? This is the New Albany, the Eagle Way. I don't want to say it right. I don't want to butcher words. This is the culture blueprint. It's essentially, it's the culture playbook. It's how we go about building culture. And when you look at it, it's very, very simple. It's very linear. So if you start on the left, you go to the right, you start with rise up and own it. What's the next piece after that is the behaviors that define rise up and own it. This is what makes Focus 3 a completely different element and when we come into the school and why we do it this way. We do it this way because it's not about feelings and fuzziness, it's concrete things. If you act this way and behave this way, you're living our culture. And if you're living our culture, the experience you'll deliver is accountability at school, home, and community and life. Look at those behaviors. Be present, responsible, and own your work. Is anybody sitting here going, nope, don't want that for my kid? If I could avoid that, that would be awesome. Nobody does that. You're milling about smartly. I can tell you have pride in your work, but I can choose to do the right thing. And it's a choice, correct? So you choose to do the right things. And the student that is present, responsible, acts with purpose and pride, chooses to do the right thing, is accountable at school, at home, and in the community and life. That's how the culture playbook really functions. Is that if we define for kids and ourselves what the expectation for behavior is, now we have a standard to hold them to. And this was all developed with the staff. I think, Mike, how many folks do we have? We had quite a few administrators and staff involved with that development. About 100 folks involved with it. This was hard fought. So that's what culture is for us, and leaders create culture. Now here's one of the things that I find is very troubling, and we find it out with students and staff. Who's responsible for building culture in the classroom?
Everyone.
Everybody's, all right. If there's people here who've heard me before, that's not fair. The idea is that leaders are not a title. Leadership is not a title you are given. Leadership is not given to you in any way, shape, or form. Leadership is influence you've earned through your behavior. So what I want to develop is the behavioral skill in our kids and in everybody in this room that we are a leader in our 20 square feet. We'll talk about 20 square feet in a minute. Is that leaders create culture. And culture is the experience of each of us in our 20 square feet, how we talk to each other, how we help each other, how we work together, what kind of execution we do when we actually do a job, what kind of effort we put into things, how we team in general. That's the real culture. And everybody here has either worked a part of or been a part of an organization that has a cultural statement that sounds really good on the wall. It looks good, it's well made. Lots of artistry went into it. That's the stated culture. That is not the culture in your business. There's a lot of folks that put things on their car that say, I believe in this and peace and love, but cut them off in traffic. And you're gonna find peace and love is not in their mind. And that's the idea. We don't want those things to be just concepts. We want them to be the way we actually act. So that is the performance pathway for us. So the next piece is this. I want you to think of this a little bit. Do I have it on that one? No, let me get back. This talks about organizations, but it also looks at individual performance. So when I look at individual performance, take this away from groups of people and think about you every day. When you wake up every day and you go to work, or you're at home working there, or you're at school, or you're teaching, you either bring the best version of you. That's that person that comes out and they're on top of things and they're energetic and they're driving forward. Sometimes you bring the average version of you. And that's probably most of the time what you bring. You do what's required of you. You do the expectation. Nothing more, nothing less, exactly there. And there are the days that we bring the lesser version of us. And that version hits snooze a lot. That version says, I'm going to stop for fast food on the way home versus everything else. There's those times that we have that. But when you look at this as a group and why people perform to the elite or to the average or to the lesser version, what do you think the expectations are of someone who's performing at the highest levels? What's the expectations on them? Do more or what? You've at least got to hold still. You've got to hold that level, right? Is that pressure? It's a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of children and adults that feel that pressure, that I'm at that elite level. What do we expect of those folks that aren't doing well? That poor, unacceptable level of performance. What's the expectation?
Not much.
Oh, there's expectations. Be at the bottom now and again. You'll find out there's like, you either got to get what? Better, or in your business, you got to get out. And that's stress too. So what do you expect of those folks who are just doing what you expect of them? What do you want from them? If you could keep breathing and holding that space, I'll call it a win. I just want you to keep doing it. You're holding a space. There's very, very little expectations. We can hide in the middle. But I thought about this very specifically when I thought about New Albany schools and the fact that I send my kids here, or one kid here and one on the way, they're coming here, is that I expect a lot. I have high expectations of the district. I have high expectations of the staff. And I want that elite performance. But that comes with a level of behavior. The difference between elite performers and average performers is not about their talent. It's about their behavior. It's how they spend their time. It's what they invest time in. You could just say, well, did you invest your time coming home on video games and playing other stuff, or did you invest your time doing your homework? That's just simply what you did with your time. Is it that you took time to help someone else in class, or did you got yours? It's how we invest our time. So we want to move our school district, our children, everything to that elite level of school district. The next thing is this, and make sure I'm on clock here. Values, ideas, and knowledge. Every school talks about them, and I see this. I've watched a lot of different education type things recently just to get myself smarter about the environment I'm working in. And they talk about great values and ideas and knowledge. What's unique about those three things? You can't see any of them. They don't exist. They're things people peddle, and they sell it. They go, this is a value, an idea, this is knowledge. But the truth is, I talked to you earlier about someone who put something on their car that says, I believe in peace, love, and everything else. You cut them off in traffic, and you get to see their behavior. My boss, Brian Kite, said something really, really profound the other day. He said, if you let me watch someone's behavior long enough, I'll tell you what their real values are. And that really kind of struck me. It struck me that we don't want to be talking about values. We want to be talking about the behaviors we want to see in our kids. When we see those behaviors, then we know the values are there. They're doing the behaviors. The other piece we talk about is ideas. Ideas are fantastic. We can talk about them all day long. But an idea has no value until it turns into action. So this is part of this plan of the R factor, is to change things that are big concepts, big ideas, into actions that we can actually see our kids do, that we can engage in, and that we can measure. It's measurable. You did it or you didn't do it. You engaged in this or you didn't. So the idea is that we're going to start coaching more on the idea of action, not conceptual. And the last thing is knowledge versus skill. There's a lot of us who know a lot of things. How many people here play golf? Anybody? Okay, I know how the game of golf is played. Would never say I was skilled at it. And that's some of the problems, is there's a lot of folks who say, I know, I know. How many people have heard this from their children? I know, I got it, uh-huh. In my house, it's a no-go. You're not allowed to say the same word twice. Because I know what that means. I'm done talking, I don't want to hear it, no. And the truth is, when someone says that it's I know, the real question is, how good are you at it? Yeah, you know it. There's a lot of stuff I know. How good am I at it? And that's the difference maker. We want to change ideas, values, and knowledge into behavior, action, and skill. Skill in solving problems. Skill in dealing with each other. Skill in connecting with each other. And I will tell you right now that young people today struggle with the personal connection. I deal with it both in the school area. I deal with it with collegiate athletes. I deal with it with people coming into the workforce. The largest question I get from business owners is, how do I get to connect and get my millennials to work harder? And I laugh hysterically. I said, it's not their problem, it's you. And if people struggle with this, they struggle really hard with it because it's so easy to point to a generation. What did the generation before us say about us? And the generation before them said about them. And so on and so forth. It's insane, and we need to stop doing that. It's self-defeating. The idea is that we have to learn how to work together, and it's not millennials versus everybody else, it's they're young. You were young once. I think I was young once. But the idea being that's just something that will come about, and they will learn the behavior, action, and skill necessary to be in your workplace or in your school or move forward. So there's two realities that we function under at Focus 3. The first reality is this one, that job skills or education skills are dictated by your behavioral skill. And the way that I describe this to you is how many people know someone at their job right now or in their family that's extremely gifted. They are talented. I mean, they're really, really good. But if you had to spend more than 5 minutes with them, you'd chew your arm off out of a bear trap. Do you think their behavioral skill causes an issue with how their job performance goes? It does, it holds them back. The same thing happens in an education setting. If someone may have actually the knowledge and maybe some of that personal gifts there, they'll never get seen if they can't manage the behavioral. We hire in businesses and places across the country, you hire for what? What do they hire for? There's job skills, what's on your resume. You have to have certain bullets hit. What do we fire everybody for? What do we spend 95% of our training dollars on? Job skills. Almost everybody spends on the technical and training and go to this training, go to that training. And there's very rare organizations that say, you know what? We're going to invest our time in the behavioral piece. And those rare organizations you will find are the places that are soaring and doing phenomenal things. It's about behavioral skill. We don't want to be limited by what is a behavioral skill before I go on? Because I think I left that one hanging there. What's a behavioral skill?
Like how you communicate with each other?
Communication is definitely one of them. Would you say listening? Are we all surrounded by so much empathy in the world that, please, if you'd stop listening to me, that would be awesome. The truth is, behavioral skill is lacking. It's a struggle, and we have to build it. It's built. It's not innate. It's something that you work on and you develop over time and you get better at it. So behavioral skills drive our job or education skills. The next thing is that as this district is going to grow and get better, that means that individuals have to choose to go on the journey. And it is a journey and it doesn't end. Once you graduate school, your kids still have life to live. It's a journey. And if you go on that journey of personal growth or personal change, however you look at the word, it starts with you individually. What if half the district or half the buildings decide they're going on this journey and they're going to go, but the other half say, nah, what happens to the journey? Why do a lot of, and I know when I say this around educators, I have to do the air quotes, why do initiatives almost always come to a halt? Because we've taught each other that if I resist long enough, you'll quit. We do this in our homes sometimes. I want a cookie, I want a cookie, I want a cookie, I want a cookie. And you've said no enough times, so finally you just need 2 seconds of peace. And you'll fine, have it. What did you teach the kid? I have a breaking point, and if you keep checking, you'll find it. I taught you to be cynical and negative. I taught you to distrust me. And they learn it. Don't they? They find that button, that limit, and they go, okay, now I'm going to push to the limit the next time. Then they see, how far do I have to go for the next one? And that's part of the idea here, that if we are cynical and negative and we don't go on the journey, then it fails. And it doesn't fail on the merits of the journey, it fails on the merits that we didn't do it. So we have to engage in this at a high level and really work with our kids, because they're going to come home and they're going to talk about this. And there's skill sets that are very simple you can work with your kids on. So, that brings me to this. In the big picture, there's a district culture and strategy. This is a big enough district, you're talking about 5,000 students, give or take. That's a lot of people. So there's a big picture culture and strategy for the district. You have that right in front of you. This is the culture. But culture will always eat strategy for lunch. Always will. If you have a great way you're going to educate kids, you have a great plan. If it falls on a culture, which means the community, the parents, the staff, the students, if that strategy falls on people who don't support it, where's it going to go? Therefore, culture is king or queen. It's in charge. It makes the decision. So we have to build a culture that says this, because this culture wins. That this culture executes what you need to do. And as we look at that and you say, well, under that big district culture and strategy, there's obviously the buildings, the smaller levels, because it's a little smaller. Would you say that the culture in K through, there's so many K, pre-K, K, 1 through, I get confused. It's confusing, but there's a lot of space, right? Would you teach the same cultural standards at an in-depth level to a senior that you would to a kindergartner? So would they require some cultural explanation? And that's why after we first introduced it with the staff, they went back to their buildings and worked on how are we going to develop this for our kids at our level. Well, here's the positive of it. If you develop it for those kids at those levels, but you maintain that all those cultures fall under the district culture, then as kids grow up through school, they have a standard that stays with them. It's not a moving target. They know what's expected of them from the day they start school to the day they graduate. And that expectation never changes, and that's behavior. If I can do this the whole time I'm in school, what kind of outcomes do I produce? Pretty good things. So as we go through, underneath that school culture and strategy, we run into the roadblock. The biggest variable in any business, the biggest variable in your home, the biggest variable in any school is the behavior of people. And my degree was in sociology, and they taught me that Carter's active number 1, when people get together, anything can happen. And the idea being, when you look at that, the 20 square feet of belief and behavior, I want you to ask yourself, can you believe for anybody else? Can you behave for anybody else? It's the variable that's essentially out of your hands. What someone else believes and how someone else behaves is 100% up to them. You can demand of your child. You can threaten your child. Say, if you don't do this, you're not going to get that. But ultimately, who chooses what they do? And we want to build the skill, right, so they make good choices. But ultimately, who makes the choice? They do. And I know my child's the only angel in the world that has never done something I didn't ask him to do. Or done something I told him not to do. And the realization is, how many of us do that? Maybe you made a deal with your spouse that we're going to lose weight, we're going to eat well, and then you're driving home going, you'll never know. I'll hide the bag. It's just that concept that you ultimately, it's you that makes the decision. So what culture really is in a school building, in a classroom, anywhere you go, is actually the 20 square feet of each child, every staff member, you as the parent, the community. It's all those 20 square feet bouncing off of each other. That's your actual culture. And you can't declare culture, you have to lead it. And that's why the staff has worked so hard on learning to lead this culture and drive these performance issues, that we can actually push for a better culture just through the work with the kids. So that's 20 square feet. Are there any questions about that? Because this is kind of a big picture idea. This is personal responsibility. So when it comes back to that leadership question, who builds the culture in your classrooms? Everybody. Everybody has a hand in it. So, brings us to the next one. What doesn't work? When you're talking about building culture and owning behavior, what does not work? And I already mentioned BCD, so I might as well bring it up. What doesn't work is BCD. Blame someone else for why you're unhappy. Complain endlessly about your situation. Or defend yourself, no matter what, right or wrong. Now, there's a definition here I want to make very clear. BCD has no inclination to solve problems. It just wants to be heard and left alone, don't solve problems. If you can use this one metric, are you ready? Here's the easiest way to tell someone's BCD or problem solving. Can I help? If I'm standing in front of you complaining about something and I ask you that question, you say, no, there's nothing you can do. Then the next question you should ask is, then why are you telling me? Because misery, I don't want to be miserable alone. I hate my heart. You should hear it too. This situation bugs me. So the idea behind BCD is that blame, complain, and defend doesn't work. And in a school district, it keeps people from learning, it keeps people from engaging. And what do we have to do? This is not just our kids. This is us in this room. When you walk into a conference with a teacher, I want you to sit there with that educator and realize I'm not going to blame, complain, and defend about my situation. I'm going to ask pertinent questions. I'm going to do problem solving with them and not just complain about the situation I'm in. Because the situation, here's the interesting thing, that's not going to change without actually solving the problem. But it's easy. This is easy. You know why this is easy? Because if you BCD, you have no requirement to solve anything. You can just make noise. How much do our kids do this? How much do we do this? How much do our bosses, how much do our coworkers do this? I do this number in businesses, and I just do for easy math. If anybody's got a calculator out there faster than I am. If you had a company where everybody made $10 an hour across the board, just for a round number is why I'm using this. $10 an hour. Say you have a 100-person company. How many hours a day do you think the average person does this? 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Do you think at least an hour? All right, easily an hour, and that's usually on the low end. So, at $10 an hour, 100 people, how much did BCD cost you in your business that day? How much? 10. We're doing, see, school, math, 10 times 100? 1,000, okay, so let's say your business is open 300 days a year. How much did it cost you? $300,000 of people standing around, doing nothing, complaining about a situation or blaming someone else or defending themselves with no desire to solve the problem. But here's the trick. Who complains by themselves? No, because misery. So let's at least multiply it by 2, and usually more. That's $600,000 on a company that only pays $10 an hour to every worker. It is a massive waste of money, time, and energy. And we wanted to teach people that if we can remove BCD or a portion of BCD out of our lives, think of the impacts. Financially, the effort level of people, we just don't engage with it. I did this with Cardinal Health in one of their divisions, and we went through, I had one of the vice presidents, she called me back and said, people are begging to be a part of my unit right now. They said, working here is awesome because everybody takes ownership. Nobody blames anybody else. And I said, I taught that. I didn't execute it, but I taught it. So the one thing we'll tell people is take this out of your life, because BCD is a choice. And you can choose to do it, or you can choose not to do it. But either way, it's your choice. And think about that. When your kid comes home and calls you out for it, don't get mad. Because 90% of the time, they're right. My son has hit me for it a couple times. I'm the guy that teaches this, so of all people, I should be good at it. And I sit there and go, he's right. And I have to kind of take it on the chin. So take this out of your life forever. Choose. When is it going to be hard for you, your kids, and the district to take this out of their life? When it's not you doing it. When your neighbors, when your friends, when everybody else is around you, they look and they start to blame, complain, and defend with no desire to solve a problem, and guess what happens? You're forced to deal with it, aren't you? And you can choose to either what? Redirect them, try to solve the problem, or simply say, if I can't help, let's not do this and do something more productive. That's hard to do, isn't it? Because what's the biggest thing? Think of the hierarchy of needs. We want to be accepted. And it's cultural to complain. It's like once people start, everybody's like, well, I went in. Let me think about something I want to complain about. Let me tell you something about 670. But we all have access to 2 things. We have access to 2 types of behavior. And I want to make sure you guys understand it. The first one is discipline. The other one's default. Discipline is simple. It's intent, purpose, and skill. Intentional behavior is pay attention to what you're doing. Anybody gone on a long drive with a family and forgot half of it? Like, I used to drive from Virginia Beach to Ohio all the time, and somehow I'd miss West Virginia. Kind of a scary part to miss if you've ever driven it. But that's not driving with intent. You can go to work all day. Your kids go to school all day, and when they come home and you ask them, what'd you do at school today? What do they say? And the reality is, if they're paying attention and they're engaged in school, they're ready to tell you everything they did. And the days they're engaged, what do they do when you ask that question? We want to build more intentionality into them, more paying attention and being engaged every day, being present, as the Culture Playbook says. On purpose. Purposeful behaviors understand your why. Why am I being nice to this person? Why am I connecting with a child in class I don't know? Why am I befriending someone who's sitting by themselves? Why am I going to sit and work really, really hard on this problem I don't like? Understanding your why allows you to be very, very functional. And next is skillful. Skillful behavior is the application of your personal abilities, your skills. Every one of us has certain things we're good at, things that we bring to the table, and we want to apply ourselves. And we've all heard when we were kids, and we've probably said to our kids, you're just not applying yourself. It's because they have skills they're not using, and it frustrates us, doesn't it? You see it, it kills you, you're like, use it! Everybody would have the happiest of all lives and would be very disciplined and winning every day if we all had just discipline to draw from. But the truth is, we all have default to draw from. This is the realities of life, and you can't escape it. Default is impulse. Impulse is what? What drives an impulsive person? Feelings? Which feeling? What emotion? Anger? Who said the current one? It's the first one. If I'm angry, I yell. If I'm upset, I cry. If I'm frustrated, I gnash my teeth and I throw a small fit. Impulse makes horrible decisions. And the truth is, impulse is default emotion. Emotions aren't bad, but default emotions usually create a train wreck for us. It's when we respond to something in the moment and later go, ooh, I shouldn't have said that. How was dinner? It was burger. It was great. In the moment, you screamed out, ooh, can I take it back? But the idea that the impulse, we make impulsive decisions. We all know that person in our life that we kind of candy coat some stories to, or we talk very gently to, because we know that their first response will be emotional. And if you don't know who that person is, it's you. Just so you know. Impulsive people, autopilot. If you're on autopilot, that just means that if you're a hammer, the whole world looks like a and you treat everything the same way, and you beat yourself against the wall. This is the person that does the same thing day in and day out. They look at their business, or their home life, or their school, and their education and say, why isn't it getting better? Well, probably because you're doing the same thing you've always done. Those habits aren't producing exceptional. So we have to think that we can't just get on autopilot and go through the motions. We can't just be timed to make the donuts. We have to do what's necessary. And finally is resistant behavior. Resistant behavior is that person that stays in their comfort zone. I don't do things that make me uncomfortable. How many people love getting up and being a public speaker? Very few of us. Most of us look at public speaking and go, nah, I'm good. I'll pass. And the reason is that it's uncomfortable, so we don't do it. Is there a lot of benefits to being able to get up and speak in front of people? A whole lot of them. But it's uncomfortable. There's so many things that we resist. We don't want to answer a question in class for the fear of looking foolish. We don't want to step up and befriend someone that's kind of awkward or different from everybody else, because we don't want everyone else to look at us differently. We want our kids to think that resistance, I'm not going to do things just because it's comfortable. We're going to embrace discomfort, productive discomfort, and we're going to do the things that are necessary to be successful. So when I look at this is not good kid, bad kid. This is not good person, bad person. This is the elite, exceptional version of myself, the average or lesser version of myself. So what makes someone elite? It's not that they're always perfect. It's they spend more time in that disciplined area than they do in default. Because we all have both. Every one of you has had an emotion. I guarantee one that jumped at you and it took a hold and you acted on it and you went, darn it, I shouldn't have done that. But you look back and go, you know what? I also spent a lot of time disciplined. And I look at SEAL training and my background. It wasn't that I was stronger than anybody else. I was able to be disciplined when other people went to default. That's it. I'm not smart enough to quit. So I just kept going. But discipline and default is that battle that we face every day. And it's a conversation you can have with your kids. This is the disciplined version or default version. If that's hard for you to talk about with a younger kid, we've also talked about on path and off path. Is this the path you need to be on, or are you off path going a different direction? It makes it an easy conversation. So you have to have a system to put this in, and that's E+R=0. Understanding that if I understand that I'm giving my discipline or default version myself, I have to be able to say, well, how do I apply this? And E+R=0 is the tool. Events are going to happen in your life. You will respond, and doing nothing counts as a response. There's no escape. And that will produce some sort of outcome. Do you control the events that happen in your life? You're not in control of them. They happen. And the outcomes that you receive are feedback. It's a feedback loop of how well you're responding. And sometimes the response is the best response you can engage in, and you still don't get the outcome you want because the you're dealing with may be certainly difficult. But the idea is to produce the best outcomes in our life, we have to respond effectively. And we have to get good at it. So E+R=0 is simply the way life works. Stuff's going to happen. You're going to respond, and it will produce something. So if we look at that, we've got to think to ourselves, how do we process this? Is first, I've got to ask myself some questions. And the first thing is, what do I need to accomplish right now? What's the outcome? Some of the most successful people I know are very outcome-driven. What's the outcome I'm looking for? Then I have to define my event very clearly for myself. And I've done this with my son. It was interesting to see him do it on his own. He's 8, and he went through this. I said, well, what's the outcome you want to happen? He said, well, I want to be able to be friends and still play, and we had a little tiff, but I want to still play with him. I'm like, okay, well, what was the event? We were doing this and doing that, and he defined the event very clearly. It took a while drawing it out of him, but I finally got it. And I said, well, what do you think you need to do to make this better? He said, I could probably just apologize. I go, that would work. It's that simple. It's not all about moving mountains. Sometimes it's how we deal with the small day-to-day events. The reality is our life is a series of small events. And the cumulative success or failures are the ones that get us, right? Success is cumulative. It builds on itself. I responded well to this, now I'm going to respond well to that. But failure's the same way. I responded poorly to this, so I'm going to stay on this track. To use the bad SEAL phrase when you're in training, if you're wrong, stay wrong. Fix it. And, well, let me come back to that for 1 second. When it talks about what's the most discipline-driven response I can engage in right now, this is where the cultural playbook is going to be taught to the kids and worked on very hard. Because when I look at that event and I know the outcome I want to produce, the next question is, what does the culture in New Albany schools demand of me? What does this culture demand of my performance that I can live and be producing exceptional for here? And as they learn it better and better, they're building the skill sets to function in all spaces. So that's why we teach that. Discipline-driven versus default-driven. There might be a laser pointer on here. I like lasers. Hey, okay. When you look at this and you look at discipline versus default, in any situation you deal with, can you think of I could respond this way or I could respond that way? There's a discipline response and there's a default response. And here's where the frustration comes in. A lot of kids have been going through school on default. Driven by the first emotion, driven by habits, driven by comfort. And then at the end of the day, they look and go, why am I not getting the outcomes everybody else is getting? Your behaviors aren't in line with your goals. And that's one of the big things that we look at here is if your behaviors for today aren't in alignment with your goals for tomorrow, you're going to be frustrated. And here's part of that frustration is what? That's your 20 square feet. I don't care if you're 80 like my kid, or if you're a senior, you've built your whole life building this person you are. That 20 square feet of very personal beliefs and behaviors. And that's why this is a struggle to change. And that's why it needs coaching, it needs to be directed, it needs to be talked about. It's hard. It's very difficult. I do this with adults all the time, and it's some of the hardest stuff I do is to talk to adults about changing behavior. And interestingly enough, when I challenge adults and say, what is it like when you're disciplined, what is it like when you're default? It's the first time in their life they've ever looked at their own behavior. And actually wrote it down. And it's impressive because people struggle at first and then they the list starts growing. And they go, okay, when I do this well, I pay attention. When I'm default, I get angry, I get frustrated. I may scream this occasional obscenity. But you look at that and go, okay, I got it. That there's a discipline and default version of me and they produce different outcomes for me. So there are 6 disciplines on how you manage that response. When I respond to somebody, and that's on your page, the backside of this. When I look at it, the first thing I should do when an event happens in my life, before I respond, is to what? Open screen test.
Pause.
Pause. Why would I pause? What does a pause provide you? It's in the sheet a little bit too. What does a pause provide you? Time. What else does it provide you?
Awareness.
What's that?
Awareness.
Clarity, awareness. By pressing pause, if you think about default behaviors, impulse and autopilot, just by pausing, I've already reduced or eliminated those 2. I'm not going to act on emotion because I stopped first. I'm not going to act just on habit because I'm going to stop and think about it. I'm going to give it a moment. And I'm going to get clarity in that moment about the event I'm dealing with. That's what a pause provides you. How long does a pause take? As long as you need it. There are some people who are very good at dealing with certain situations. Would you agree? That someone who's very quick at answering questions, someone's quick at work, and their pause, because they've built the skill, is that fast. But you or I may sit in the same situation and have to sit for a minute. Like when my son brings me his math homework home, for him, his pause is like, oh yeah, it's this. And I'm sitting there going, It takes me a while. But that's because he has a skill for that, and I didn't. The pause is as long as you need it to be, and it's also as short as you build it. I talk to a lot of young people who say, well, I don't have time to pause. Life's moving too fast. The truth is, you have the amount of time to pause that you've built, that you've trained to. If you haven't trained to it, you don't have to pause. If you do train to it, you'll have that skill in your hands. The next thing is, once you pause, you have to do what? Manage what's between your ears. Get your mind right. We derail ourselves so much by what we focus on, what gets our attention. If you've been driving down the highway, around the outer belt, and you've been driving behind a car and that person is stop and go or they're swerving back and forth, In your mind, you're focusing on the inconvenience of their existence. The worst part about it is you start to tell a story about who they are. And that story you tell yourself is completely fiction, but you believe it. I'm serious. You start to actually get angry about who they are. You call names, you got all these things going on in your head. And then as you feel angry about them, how do we drive? Oh, because there's only 3 types of drivers. The ones that drive too fast, they're idiots. Too slow, morons. And then there's me, and I don't know which one the other 2 of you guys are, but the idea is that's the way we think. So we have to manage what goes on between our ears and don't tell ourselves a story we know is not true. And how many of you have caught yourself in the story? You're talking about how bad something is at work or at home, and then all of a sudden you go, it's really not that bad. In that moment, you caught yourself. You're like, wait, that's dumb. I'm telling myself a story that doesn't exist. And this is part of what the skill set we want to build in the kids, that they can look at something, and as they tell themselves a story, they go, you know what? That's not real. I'm going to stop. I'm going to refocus back on what's important in the moment, tell myself a positive story, get that feeling of positive action, and go deal with it. And it's something you can learn. The next part is step up. You press pause and you get your mind right in order to step up. If we don't step up, nothing happened. Stepping up is an act of courage. Stepping up is that thing that when you win the now, you win the moment. Life is a series of moments. Sometimes you win it right in the moment. Sometimes it's a long journey and you have to win over time. And that takes skill and ability. Then we have to step up to the predictable. Are there some things in life we know are coming? Who just knew spring break happened? Did we know it was coming? Did anybody get caught by surprise the week before or that first day and go, oh, we're on spring break? It happens. So we have to step up. The next thing you have to think about is I have to adjust and adapt. The world is constantly changing. It's changing for your children, it's changing for you, and it's changing for the schools. We will find life increasingly difficult if we don't change. But it's how you frame it and think about change. Change is a necessity. If you're not changing, you're falling behind. So the person who resists change is at their own folly. Change is a necessity and an opportunity. Remember those 2 words. Necessity and opportunity. And it's funny how much we're terrible at change as adults. And what do we ask our children to do every year of school? Step into a new classroom and change. And when they don't, we get frustrated. Is that a little hypocrisy sometimes? Yeah. We have to be able to adjust and adapt with their education process as much as they do. And we have to get good at it. So adjust and adapt. The next thing is this. Make a difference. This is about how your behavior impacts other people. I want you to start having that as part of your process. Press pause, get my mind right, step up and deal with it. Adjust my behavior as necessary, but realize, how can I impact the people around me positively? How can I give them an experience of me that is elite? That they look at the experience of spending time with me as a positive. And I will tell you what, with all the fears in schools and everything else, this is the big one. Learn to connect with each other. Learn to make a personal connection with each other. Get to know people and make a difference in their life. If I can make sure my behavior impacts somebody positively, think of the changes we can make. And this is real. This is not theory or somebody else doing it. This is me owning my 20 square feet. In my 20 square feet, I can affect change. And it's not outside, I'm going to do it inside. I'm going to do it person to person. That's why Make a Difference is so powerful. And if you can teach people how to do it and how to truly connect and how to care and listen. And here's the part that I want kids to understand. Caring and listening are an action, not a feeling. It's something you do for someone else. If it makes you feel good, awesome. But it's something you do. And I want kids to realize, and adults, you don't have to like someone to care for them. It is not a requirement. But you can still care about them, and you can have their best interests at heart, but you don't have to actually like somebody for that to happen. But you know what I find out for most people, kids included? If you care about someone like that legitimately, you know what ends up happening over time? You start to like them. But we got to start with caring. And the next piece is this. We got to build skill. Whatever you're dealing with in your life, it's probably not going to happen just once. It's real important that we get skillful at it, that we build the personal skill to deal with all these various events, which means we have to practice. We have to talk about it. It can't just be something that we send the kids off to school and say, okay, they'll do it. No, you're in this. When we built your culture playbook, I told Michael, I told the whole staff, I said, this is not for just the kids. And if you think it is, it will fail. This is for the kids, the staff. It is for the parents in this room, the parents who aren't here. It's for the community around the school district. It is for everybody to understand that if we can operate like this, we will have the kind of district you're looking for. So that's the 10,000 foot version of this. This gets way, way deeper. It's usually 12 hours of training. You got the minute version. So I'm gonna just take a minute and let you guys ask questions, because this is, you drank from a fire hose, so go, go, go. What kind of questions do you have about this? All right, I'm awesome.
Scott, why 20 feet? I'm sure it's more of a figurative term, but how you define that 20 feet?
20 square feet, why was it 20, not 10 or 30? Well, because 10 was too little and 30 was too much. It's just an idea, the fact that I control my space. I make the decisions in here. I'm within my little radius, I choose. And I have the power to choose. And I want people to feel empowered that I have the right to choose. But just so you understand, in that 20 square feet, you win or lose, right? You can make good choices, you can make bad choices. But ultimately, they were your choices.
You can have 20/20 is perfect vision.
There you go. Hindsight's also 20/20. I really shouldn't have done that.
How's this getting rolled out for elementary school students?
We'll talk about that.
I'm gonna go ahead and hand that up to them on that one. I don't get to play in the details. I roll it out to mine every day if that works. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you very much for listening to me. I know it's
Hi, I'm Lily. I'm a 9th grader at Albany High School, and this is how I press pause. So I have a little brother, and he's 12, and I'm 15, so there's a close enough age difference that he knows how to annoy me and push my buttons in every way possible. The ways that I've learned to help solve my problems with my brother is by pressing pause. I tend to sit and I think about what I really want the outcome to be. Do I want to get in trouble, or do I want my parents to get my brother out of the situation? But on bad days, I don't press pause, I just go into autopilot, and I don't really think about my options, I kind of just do, giving me that, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble outcome. But on good days, I tend to stop and think and weigh my options. Do I want to have my electronics taken away, or do I want to have my brother be in trouble? And that tends to usually work with my brother being in trouble. And that's why I press pause.
Hi, I'm Zach Rutledge. I'm in 11th grade, and I'm here to talk about how I've used the R factor in my life. I was introduced to the R factor my sophomore year during football. Our coaches taught us this equation, E+R = O, event plus response equals outcome. And they said that you can use this in any aspect of your life. They told us that in any event, we control our response in order to get the outcome we want. Let me give you an example. In football, we have games, that's our event. And the outcome we want is to win the games. So our response is to work hard, get our minds right, and do anything we can to get the outcome we want. Now I know that all of you don't play football, so I have an example of how I've used the R factor in school. Let's say I have a math test, my event, and the outcome I want is to get a good grade on the test. So my response is to get my mind right, study hard, and ask the teacher any questions I need in order to achieve the outcome I want. The R factor is a disciplined mindset that makes you stop and think about how you need to respond to get the results you want. To get a great outcome, you need a great response.
Hi, I'm Josie Smith, and today I will be talking to you about my E+R = O. The E in my life is my life. Every day I have a chance to make an outcome that I want. The O in my life, I want to play college basketball and have an impact on my friends and the community. The only thing I control is my R. In order to control my R, I have to be disciplined. I can't default to lazy habits. Because the difference between my dreams and my reality is my discipline. In order to control my R, I practice basketball 12 hours a week, I have a personal trainer, and I also play on a travel team. In order to have an impact on the community, I build intentional relationships with underclassmen. On Wednesday mornings, I pick up 3 freshmen and I go to breakfast with them and try to get to know more about their lives, and they get to know more about me, and hopefully I can have a good impact on their lives. So by being disciplined and controlling my R, I can get the outcomes that I want.